Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fundamentalist Fails. It is Friday, my favorite day, and I want to say a big shout out to everybody out there joining me for the Friday Fundamentalist Fails. Now, mostly Fundamentalist Fails, I kind of had as a series to sort of point a finger and laugh at the more ridiculous claims and the more ridiculous stuff that sort of fundamentalists really do. But this one is a bit different. I found this one sort of halfway during the week, and it was from Brian Holdsworth a month ago. And it is a more serious one because it sort of deals with a sensitive topic, and that is sort of cultural appropriation and forced conversion and, cultural genocide, as it has been called. So this isn't going to be the usual happy time that we're all used to. It's more going to deal with the way that the Catholic Church, or rather the fundamentalists in the Catholic Church, are really dealing with some of the things that have come out about what the church did in colonial Canada. So if we're here for a lighthearted time, maybe today isn't it. Maybe if you feel a bit sort of not able to deal with things, or if things have been too much lately, maybe this isn't the one for you, because some of the stuff that I found out was pretty dreadful and sort of echoed my country's own past, I think, in a very major way. I think that it really did. I sort of felt echoes of what my country had been appallingly responsible for as well. But look, Canadians are some of my favorite people. They really are. I do love Canadians. They are really cool people. They laugh at others while nobody knows they're laughing at them. They really are awesome people for the most part that I've met. I don't extend the same privilege to Brian Holdsworth. I really do not. He's a piece of crap, to be honest with you. And I'll explain why. I think that this man, I think he's at, I think it's about 300 and something thousand subscribers. He is using his platform to promote disinformation and to promote hateful content, like just hateful content that should absolutely be banned. Oh, it's only 142,000. Oh, just only 150K. That's all good. That's all good. Oh yeah. I sorry, I forgot. Is it? I know that there is a Canadian Thanksgiving as well. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving. I know that you're in the US, Marty. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving as well. I think that I really think that, and let's be honest here, Thanksgiving is tied to the destruction of the First Nations of the country. And I don't want to bring everybody down, but we've got to deal with what's in front of us. And I don't see a problem with celebrating sort of the sharing things and being thankful. I get you, but let's not pretend that it's not tied to that. Let's be sensitive about it and say, yeah, I realize that this may not have the same thing to you. Yeah, okay, Andrew. No, you got it, man. You got it. But is this guy fundamentalist? I don't know. I don't care. He's an asshole. He's an absolute asshole. And I will explain why. But I'll get into this, and I do apologize. Today may be a shorter one. I had a massive headache last night, but I'm okay. I've just had a couple of painkillers, but I should be all right. But I'm not feeling 100%. I think Brian Holdsworth gave me a headache. Quite frankly, and so this popped up on his feed. This is sort of I could be arrested for this video kind of thing. So he's really leaning in to the whole they're trying to silence me kind of stuff. And we can look at why this is so egregious and why this is so horrible. Oh, thank you, Jedi. Yeah, I probably need to a bit more, to be honest with you, mate. Yeah, it is this guy. And I wonder where our friend Canadian Catholic is, because he seems to fit the bill. All you have to do, apparently, to get rid of Canadian Catholic is talk about um, um, having a debate with him, and he's gone. He's in the wind, and it has been on my mind recently. I will share with you that it is frustrating at the moment for me to want to debate in good faith, and people will come along, accuse me of dodging debates in the chat. I will go to set one up, and they'll do nothing, absolutely nothing. They will basically say, "Oh no, and just ghost me." And it's like, what is going on with these Christians and these Muslims, these people, that as soon as you want to, they say, "Oh, I'll debate you," and as soon as you say, "Okay, sure, set up a time," and I'm happy to, they're in the wind. They're just gone. Like, it is really the most. I mean, I've heard about debate bros that beat their chest and say, "Debate me," but as soon as you say, "Sure," they're gone. They're over the horizon and gone. Wow. Yeah, and we'll discuss that. We'll definitely discuss that. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's just, I I don't mind people like not debating. It's just, don't debate, bro. If you're gonna do that, it. Oh, Chris Langan, is that supposedly the self-declared smartest man in the world? Like, we don't have a record of any test that he's actually done, but he's declared himself like. Didn't he used to be like a what was he? He was, it was some menial job, and he sort of he got like, he says that he's had intelligence tests, and he comes out way beyond Einstein, way beyond thing. Yeah, bartender. Yeah. Yeah, he's been around for a while. You occasionally run into people who are like, "Yeah, he's the smartest man in the world and he knows everything." Kind of, his takes aren't even that smart. And just because somebody is intelligent doesn't mean they're right. And that's something you've got to keep in mind. Just because somebody has a high level of intelligence, i.e., they're able to assimilate ideas very quickly, doesn't mean they're right about those ideas. We know Newton was a genius. Newton invented calculus. He was a genius. He also believed in alchemy and died from probably mercury poisoning, trying to turn lead into gold. It is possible to be highly intelligent, even a genius, and a complete dumbass at the same time. That is absolutely sort of true. Yeah, and he never shows proof of his IQ. Look, IQ is very, very badly understood, like very badly understood. It seems to be an ability to assimilate and comprehend new information, and that's what it seems to be. It doesn't make you right. Yeah, I am wary of anybody that talks up their own IQ, and Chris Langan is the he is the captain of talking up his own IQ. I don't see a big look. It's just another shill trying to make money from making these claims.
The first bishop of my diocese was a French missionary named Vitel Grandin, and popular contemporary impressions might describe him in fairly unflattering terms, but the reality is he was a man who sacrificed a comfortable life as a French cleric to come to the edge of the known world, not to serve European settlers, but an indigenous.
Is that loud enough? Oh, it's up all the way. Is that loud enough, or is it a bit too quiet? I think it might be a bit too quiet. Give me 1 sec, and I will. Try this on.
Population of what would eventually become Western Canada. In fact, his dedication and devotion to these people and his concern for their spiritual and temporal welfare was so absolute that he became known by his contemporaries as the Indian bishop. His pastoral territory was
Yeah. So Vital Justin Grandin was a bishop that came to Canada, to the sort of frontier of Canada. Essentially, he was doing missionary work. He was converting people. Now, when we look back at these sort of figures from the past, these sort of very contentious figures, they sometimes do a lot of good and a lot of harm at the same time. It isn't just one or the other. Yeah, they helped bring them blankets and food when they were suffering and trying to help them. They also took their children away and forcibly converted them to their religion. Okay, don't forget that rarely do you see a figure in history that's all good or all bad. Rarely do you see that. And I'm not saying there's not those figures. There's definitely those figures that have done all bad. But mostly when we're talking about colonialism, we're really talking about a mixed sort of, yes, they wanted to help and did atrocities while doing so. So morally, how do we judge them? Morally, we sort of say, hey, they didn't know what they were doing at the time, kind of thing. And absolutely, Austin called it. I was going to bring up Mother Teresa. Now, Mother Teresa is another figure like this man that the Catholic Church holds up as a standard for, goodness and helping the suffering from others. The problem was, the real problem was that Mother Teresa believed that suffering was holy, that she denied medical care and she denied pain relief to people who were dying because she thought it was holy to do so. At least for others, at least for the primitive Indian people, and by India I mean actually the people of India. So human girl. I'm sort of going through why she wasn't. So the people that were suffering were left to suffer and writhe in pain when she could have helped them with medicine, but she denied them medical care because she thought that was holy for them, right? For them, because when she got sick, she traveled back to the Western world and went into hospital where she was treated properly. So that is insane. Like that is hypocrisy on a whole other level. She really was an awful human being. Yeah, right. So yeah, I think that so the story of what happened to the First Nations of Canada is complex. It's sad. There is, like, they want to point to providing food and helping out the native tribes and ignore all of the other atrocities that they did. Now, those other atrocities are the ones that we're kind of finding out about, and part of that is these schools that were presided over by this particular bishop. So yes, he helped them out with certain things. He cared for them. He gave them, food when they needed it. He gave them things that they needed. He also forcibly converted their children in order to save their souls, and thought he was doing the right thing because their souls were in peril.
Incredibly vast, stretching from the Hudson Bay out east through the far north, all the way to the far west in what is now Canada. As a point of reference, that's something like the entire circumference of the state of Texas and most of its neighboring states. And to traverse this vast, undeveloped, frozen wilderness, he primarily used canoes and sled dogs, nearly freezing to death on multiple occasions. Grandin's life was so heroic and so self-sacrificial that he has attained recognition as venerable in the universal.
Yeah, so I don't think that it was all... So the why was he out there is the question that sort of comes out time and time again. So a lot of the time they'll sort of go, well, he was there to help the natives and help the First Nations and help them. Well, was he? Because I think he was there to convert them. That's why he was sent there. He wanted to convert them. So part of that is of missionary work is helping out people, is helping them with their troubles. And we get that. It's just when they're doing it so that they will convert to the church, is it really a humanitarian action? Because if they're only doing it so that those people will change to the Catholic Church, it's not humanitarian, it's religious. We have humanitarian things these days. We have things like Doctors Without Borders. They are humanitarian. They're not expecting you to do anything. They will help anybody with modern medicine, regardless of who you are, as long as if you need medical care, they will give it. That's their entire premise. That is humanitarian. When the Catholic Church sends people to sort of communicate with the First Nations and give them food, and then teach them about Christ, that isn't humanitarian anymore. That's missionary work. That is trying to convert people with kindness. And they also didn't use kindness as well. They forcibly removed their children.
Church one step away from beatification. After the various
and so was Mother Teresa, and she was an awful human being. Look, just because the Catholic Church holds somebody up for beatification or being a saint does not mean they're a good person. Absolutely not. I don't know. This is a terrible argument for the person being a good person. Terrible.
Treaties were signed between indigenous tribes and the British Crown, which signed over any rights the native people had to the land that Britain wanted to consolidate. It became obvious to Grandin that this agreement would only secure their extinction because...
Okay, so let's not forget the role that the Catholic Church played in the monarchy. Let's not forget that the monarchy was propped up by the church. Don't make no mistake about the intertwined nature of these two institutions. He wants to say, oh, well, it was all the crown that did it, kind of thing. Well, hang on a second. The crown was propped up by the Catholics and the Protestants and all these churches, as long as they're allowed to go and convert people. They both were working with one another. It wasn't this idea of, oh, well, that was just the crown kind of thing. No, that is not how it works. Okay.
After all, they were a nomadic people who relied on hunting for their sustenance. But hunting herds of large game required the ability to move and follow these great...
Unconditional love? Is that what you're talking about in chat? Sorry, I missed everything. Hello, Robin. Good to see you. My mod's back. Hello, Ember. Good to see you. Sorry, I didn't say hello to people, but I'm kind of pushing on because I'm feeling a bit under the weather, but I should be okay. I should be okay. What are we talking about? I don't. Conditional love is not real love. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I don't know. No, Robin. He said conditional. It says conditional. It says conditional. It's conditional. Love is not real love, not unconditional. I don't know, because do we put conditions on love? I don't think so. I mean, not on the feeling, but I think that at certain points I would find it hard to love somebody, even if it was my child. If my child grew up to be Hitler or something, I really would find it hard to say, well, you're an awful, terrible human being, but I still love you. Maybe I would. Doctrine of discovery, correct? Yeah, doctrine of discovery, and it kind of echoes what happened in Australia, where we have something called the stolen generation. Absolutely, we do not deny it. It absolutely happened. A lot of Aboriginal Australian people were taken from their parents and put into Catholic schools in order to be converted to the religion and the culture.
Herds across the vast Canadian prairies. But as soon as they were locked into these reserved territories, their ability to follow those herds became impossible, which led to extreme poverty and in some cases starvation. So unless they could learn to farm or participate in the settler economy through like a trade of some kind, Grandin was convinced they basically had no future. So he desperately and urgently campaigned for funding for schools that would help them to learn to adapt to this future emerging Canada.
Okay, so this is such a whitewashed version of what's happening. He's not wrong, right? Because the government penned them up on reservations, they were in trouble. Because their lifestyle was generally nomadic and tribal. They were having a hard time. Now, I don't know if there would be no future for them unless they could learn to be basically live like settlers. I don't think that's the case, and that does not excuse taking their children forcefully. Like, it's not like they asked permission to raise their the people's children. Say, hey, can we take you and put you in this boarding school? This revisionism is absolutely terrible. It's absolutely terrible because we're talking about priests that came and either forcefully took the children or convinced them that their children would be better off in the schools kind of thing. Like, so they basically compelled them to do so in one way or another with force and violence, or through telling them, all of this stuff. And were they really interested in the welfare of the children? No, they wanted to convert them. That was what they were trying to do. They were trying to save the souls of the savages that had no knowledge of God. And it's so blatantly transparent of this absolute fucker to suggest that it was all out of just total kindness. No.
And by all contemporary accounts, he was a champion of the First Nations people and much loved by them. He risked life and limb to serve them and suffered greatly on their behalf. And fast forward.
Yeah, I don't think he was loved by all of them, because a lot of them have a problem with him now. I think that like I said, any figure like this out of history is complex. Yes, he did do a lot for them, but he did a lot wrong by them as well. So he tried to help, sure, but part of his helping was taking their children to save them from damnation. And that's where we have a problem. That's where the Catholic Church overstepped the line. It is the same as the stolen generation in Australia. We have to remember that these people had their fucking children taken away against their will in order to save their souls or modernize them or, destroy their culture. It's not right. And we can't sit here and revise history like, but they would have died without it. Would they? We don't know that. We have no counterfactuals to say what would have happened. But it is like, we could have, if we had a modern sensibility, we wouldn't go and take away, we wouldn't probably go in and take their lands and then hem them up in little patches first. Firstly, that's what we wouldn't do. Number two, we wouldn't take away their children, force them to not not pay attention and not learn their own culture. We would help their own culture survive. It's not right what is happening. It really is not right. So I want to take you through sort of really sort of another side of what happened. So this is sort of from The Guardian. It's an article on the cultural genocide back in 2021. Now, this is September 2001, about 1,300 unmarked graves. So they think they are unmarked graves kind of thing. That he kind of tries to spin it as, oh, we don't know that they are. This is how the First Nations sort of originally looked, all of their lands sort of melting up. But I want to show you this, that the schools were designed. So for the most of the 20th century, at least 139 resident schools were run by Catholic, Anglican, and United churches with financial support from the federal government. It's estimated that 150,000 Indigenous children attended. They're prohibited from speaking their native languages and had to adopt their school's religious denomination. Okay, so underline that and go over it again. They weren't allowed to practice their own culture, and they had to convert to the religion of the school. Right. Many were beaten, verbally and sexually abused, and thousands died from disease and neglect and unaliving themselves. So these red ones are the ones that are, oh no, that's school closures. So in 1956, he was a survivor, Jack Kruger. We have actual people that survived at St. Eugene's School. Police officer and a priest arrived at his home and took him to the train station. It was about 300 miles. He was then put on a cattle truck, staffed like sardines with others. He was at the school for 3 years, but the abuse and suffered and witnessed remains with him. When you were a little boy, you couldn't do nothing. You couldn't say nothing. The priests had so much damn much power. Yeah, I bet they did. He was beaten for speaking his own language. I lost my language for 40 years because they told me it was the devil's tongue. I was brainwashed. And this is the thing, that's what they do to the children. We have echoes of that in the stolen generation in Australia. We have echoes of that. That is what happened to them. They were told it was the devil's tongue as well, that they were letting the devil in, and they were indoctrinated through violence and, you know, convinced by the priest. Now, these are where the red circles are where unmarked graves have actually been found, right? These yellow ones are where it's been investigated. So I think the main one that they're talking about, but the red ones are confirmed, right? They've been confirmed as unmarked graves. 735 unmarked graves, 38, 751. I think that, so this is being updated as the investigation is going on as well. So they're really good at updating the things that they find. Yeah, Sacred Heart. Yeah, real sacred, guys, real sacred. Kamloops, yeah. So that's basically a rundown. So they sort of reported that it amounted to a cultural genocide. Now, remember that phrase, cultural genocide, right? Remember that phrase. And remember that, you know, when reporting stuff like this, we're basically saying that they were beaten, they were abused, there was all kinds of horrible stuff going on, right? But we want to watch how this man spins it, because he will be spinning this in a certain way. But I want to sort of give you the background of that.
To today, and two major Catholic school boards in the archdiocese he founded, in which I live, unanimously voted to remove Grandin's name from any building, school, association, or institution bearing his name. And the city I live in, a city that he was instrumental.
Yeah. This man should not be held up as a paradigm of goodness. He did some horrible things. Is the helping out of the First Nations enough to weigh against the atrocities that were done by the Catholic Church in the colonialism period? And I want to make this perfectly clear for everybody. I don't know if anybody knows who Lindsay Ellis is, but I heard this quote from her. Colonialism is baked into the bedrock of every modern society in the world. Okay, I'm going to say that again so people up the back can hear it. Colonialism is baked into the bedrock of every modern society throughout the world. It is the hangover that we are still suffering from. Now, a lot of people will go, "Oh, but I wasn't there. I didn't know. I wasn't even born." Correct. You are not to blame for what happened. All of us are responsible. Okay, a lot of times I talk about blame versus responsibility. What does that mean? And the best sort of thing I can give you in a employment context, right? Like you just say you sell a product to somebody in your employment, right? And it's a terrible product, it breaks, it was faulty maybe from the factory, you know what I mean? Like the person gets it home and it just instantly breaks. They come back, maybe they've had a bad day, they're a bit mad, and they say, "Hey, this broke," kind of thing. You are not to blame for that happening, right? That was made before you even got to it. You didn't know it was bad. You had no idea. It's not your fault that it broke. You are not to blame. You are, however, responsible. So responsibility means that you have an obligation to alleviate or it's in some way fix the injustice or the problem that has occurred. So none of us are to blame for the horrible things that happened during colonialism. But as part of the descendants of the colonists, we are all responsible for being aware of what happened and not doing this revisionist bullshit to sort of say, "Hey, no, it was all good. They would have been bad without us. We did them a favor." I mean, excuse me, but screw that. It is bullshit. It is absolute bullshit. You can't say that you went into, and some of the apologetics I've heard around this is absolutely reprehensible. "Oh, well, they all killed each other." Go F yourself. Seriously. That doesn't make it right. So we have in our society descendants of the people that went in and brutalized in order to take others' lands for themselves. And we have descendants of the people who were brutalized. And one side is doing a lot better than the other. Now, those people who are descendants of the colonialists, they're not to blame. But we are responsible. We're responsible for making things better, and we're responsible for not forgetting the horrendous scar on the planet caused by colonialism. Because there's a scar, and it is very evident to me that we have people who were colonized who really ought to have had these massive, vast tracts of land, and they don't. No, it's the colonizers that own it all now. It's bewildering to me that people don't look at, they look at it and go, "Well, what's the problem?" The problem is that was ripped from them, and we can't do anything about it now. I get that. It's changed hands. A lot of stuff has happened, but we can at least be responsible for ensuring the same thing doesn't happen again. I'm looking at you, Russia. And Ukraine, I happens all over again because people want to deny it ever happened. No, it didn't happen. To set stuff as right as we can. Yeah, absolutely, Alex. And that doesn't mean we're to blame. We couldn't do anything about it. We can't do anything about it now, but we can try. And the bare minimum is at least to be aware and say, "Hey, yes, the stolen generation in Australia happened, and the government needs to provide reparations for that." The government has apologized for it, which is like a bare minimum. And one of our candidates that wants to be prime minister walked out on that apology, right? Just walked out on the apology, and that is reprehensible. I cannot say how mad that makes me. What a freaking... He's horrible. Absolutely horrible. Yeah, absolutely, Robin. Look, things aren't black and white, human girl. You can be proud of your English blood. That's okay, but sort of, you know, be aware of the damage it has caused other people. You can do that. I'm proud to be an English convict. You know, I'm proud to be a prisoner of the motherland, sent off to die on a continent that has no mercy. But, you know, I can also say you know, there was a lot of wrong stuff that happened back there. And you know, the government has to apologize. I'm not the government. I didn't do anything, but it's at least my responsibility to say, when I can influence the government, to say, hey, those people deserve more from the government because the government did them wrong. I can at least be known to say that, instead of, oh, what are they complaining about? It was hundreds of years ago and no one cares. You know, like that's enough. That's enough to say, hey, no, it is a serious issue.
In establishing as a Catholic mission, is now entertaining a petition to remove his name from any neighborhood or institution bearing his name. So why has his reputation suffered so much, even among Catholics? Because when judged by the moral sensibilities of contemporary society, the Indian residential school system, which he campaigned to help establish, is considered a moral stain on the character of Canada's history. And I want to pause there and ask a question, hopefully an introspective and an honest question that I think we need to ask ourselves. Do we as a society have the moral and intellectual integrity to admit that as a society and a culture, we don't have any objective moral standard through which...
So this is what really gets me about these people, that as soon as something in the past that their church has done wrong, they will go to moral relativism. So what he's talking about is presentism, right? We sort of don't judge them necessarily by modern standards because they didn't know any better, right? But here's the thing. How dare this absolute joke of a man go to moral relativism? So here's the thing. Every time an atheist says, well, you know, we think morals are relative, they're largely around the culture at the time, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of objective morality, it is, well, you don't have objective morals. So, ha ha ha, atheist, I have real morals because yours aren't objective. Right? That's what we hear all the time. Oh, but it's not real morality because ours is objective. And look, can I just share? This is a video by the same person of the dictatorship of relativism. I'm not even joking. You can't make this shit up. Like, seriously. He's talking about how, like, moral relativism is so bad. And he's got a few other videos like that as well, talking about how moral relativism is horrible because they're not objective, so they're not real. But as soon as his church has done the wrong thing, oh, but morals are relative, aren't they? We can't judge people in the past. We can't judge the church in the past because presentism is moral relativism, Brian. It is. It's basically saying, hey, that was the morals at the time. They thought they were doing good by forcibly converting and taking away the children of people. Okay, so Emma, so morals don't have to be objective and absolute. They can be objective and change over time. That is true, right? They don't have to be absolute. But if they're objective, then they would have been objectively bad then, because they would have been doing what the church knew to be objective morality as well. So number one, what is the objective standard? God's nature. Well, God's nature doesn't change. If it's God, what God says, right? So the absolute morality argument comes from God's nature doesn't change, and we base our morals on God's nature, right? That's why they're often said to be objective and absolute. Now, it could be something objective but not absolute. Like, so it can change, but it still is objective. Like, for instance, if the just say, for instance, I don't personally believe it. Just say morals are the way that you evolve, basically. So just say evolution just provides you objective morality. Like, it's just objective that's the morals. It's not stance dependent. Evolution could change those objective morals over time. Just like where a stone is located is objective, but it's not absolute because it can change over time, right? But it is objective. It's not stance dependent on where that stone is. That's irrelevant of anybody's stance on it, right? So it needn't be objective and absolute, but often they are, because they will hinge morality on God's nature, and God's nature is absolute. That's why they sort of say that. But yeah, you've got a point. They didn't know any better is relativism. It's saying, hey, the morals of the time really said that was okay. And we try not to do that. But look, we don't judge harshly people of the time because they didn't know any better. However, that doesn't mean that we worship or revere them or glorify them if they have done things that we now find wrong. Because essentially, when we glorify someone's actions from the past, we're saying we want this to be a part of our society going forward, right? We want this person's actions and their deeds to be representative of what is good. So, like, I totally get, and historians especially don't say, hey, they did X in the past, it is automatically they're a really horrible person kind of thing. That's fine. I get presentism, and I understand that man probably didn't know any better. But we do not glorify people that have done harm in the past, because we do not want their behavior to be glorified. And so this black and white thinking from Holdsworth is basically either you glorify somebody or they're the most evil person in the world. No, like I said, it's complicated. But there's another factor here. There's another factor here, and that is that you have the descendants of people who have endured that treatment, right? That you have another factor. And so glorifying somebody who has treated them badly is not a good idea. And we don't want to glorify that behavior. We don't want to say, hey, this person did some good and did atrocities. Let's glorify him for the good. No, we don't do that. We say, hey, it's very complicated. And yes, he did good things, but they do not outweigh the harm that he did. And we know that now. But of course, the Catholic Church has got a Catholic Church and protect the Church no matter what lies they tell.
We can establish any superiority over our ancestors. Consider how often our moral sentiments fluctuate in this modern age.
That's moral relativity. That's like you're talking. You just said we shouldn't judge him by moral standards, but our moral standards today fluctuate. It's moral relativity. And we're trying to find a way that we can have these moral pronouncements based upon the well-being of human beings. Like we really want to hinge it upon people and not what God says. At least with modern moral systems, they're paying attention to people and not just what some dude in a church wearing a dress is saying.
It's just as likely that our descendants will hold us in contempt for our moral certitude.
Okay, Austin. That's not entirely okay. So that's complicated. Okay, that's really complicated. So yes, nominally, he was a Christian, a Catholic, which is a Christian, although some fundamentalists will disagree with that. But anyway, yes, he was a Catholic. He never renounced his Catholicism. However, he expressed a great hatred for the Catholic Church, mostly because he wanted unrestricted access to do anything he wanted. And he seemed to have this almost paganish sort of belief in sort of Germanic kind of stuff, you know, sort of the divine right and his divineness kind of thing, which the Catholic Church was not on board with. So, he definitely was not Jewish. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Although he was Austrian with dark hair, which means that he may have had some sort of Jewish blood in him. But, you know, yeah, he was into the occult. Yeah, so this sort of neo-paganism at the time, he was kind of on board with. Really, really weird guy. He certainly wasn't an atheist, because he talked all the time about divineness and the divine right of the sort of Aryans kind of thing. But I don't think he was Catholic either, because of the way he denigrated the entire church and Catholics in general. But he was nominally, so he was baptized a Catholic and he never renounced it. But when you get down to what he actually believed, it seemed to be occultism that he was into. Now, when you talk about the Germans at World War II, a great majority of them were Catholic. That is undeniable. It was the majority religion in Germany. It was the majority religion in their military. They did have Gott meint uns written on their belts, which is God with us. They were Catholic.
Today, how can such an arbitrary approach feed such a confident reproach toward their?
No, that's not exactly true. Nazis actually were mostly Catholic. They saw, or the way that they saw it was that the Jewish people had put to death Jesus Christ, and so they were responsible for the Messiah being killed. So it depends on the person. Some of them just were fighting for their homeland, you know, but they were Catholic, absolutely. The Nazis were Catholic, predominantly.
Ancestors. By today's moral sentiments, unhinged from any rational moral philosophy, every boarding school ever would fail to pass the scrutiny of what we consider abuse. Consider that the strap, which was a leather strap you would use to hit children, was considered a perfectly humane form of discipline all the way.
Yeah, but we're not talking about kids being hit with a strap. We're talking about kids dying. We're not. No, all good, Austin, all good. Oh, look, tangents in the chat for Austin. Throw some tangents at Austin. He deserves them. Absolutely deserves them. Take this. I don't know. I find it interesting. Yeah, it's all good, Austin. It's all fine, man. No worries. Yeah, tangents in the chat, please. It's good to see you all. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And we don't say, we don't say, hey, all those boarding schools did that, and that's okay. We say, hey, boarding schools were awful because they used these kind of punishments. I remember canings in school. Right? Does anyone remember canings? If you're in Australia, you may. I was once caned. Basically, they would take a bamboo cane and they would give you smacks across the hand with it. Really horrible stuff. It's not right. So I disagree with any kind of corporal punishment. Any kind of punishment that says, hey, we will use violence to correct behavior. Right, it doesn't work. It does not work, because all you're teaching them is that matters can be resolved with violence. Violence, a child being taught that violence is the only thing that will fix problems or correct behavior will just lead to more violence. Like, they will be violent to their kids. if they internalize that, it is violence will correct people when they do wrong by you, and that is not a good lesson to learn. So no one's saying that's a good thing, but notice the sort of conflation he's doing here. He's saying, oh, but all boarding schools used to do this. That is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, you know, real abuse of people and deaths of children. Like, we're talking about unmarked graves of children and children that have gone missing somehow from the, you know, the reservations. They took them away in order to save them or protect them. They took them away in the early 1800s in order to protect them, and they just never were seen from again. That is not the same thing. So Holdsworth is absolutely conflating here with sort of, oh, well, they got disciplined in all boarding schools. Yeah, did they die?
Up into the 80s in the public schools where I live. When I started school, the strap was still being employed in my hometown. Now, that's not to minimize the suffering of Indigenous people through these institutions, but it is to say that it's very easy to construct a narrative of.
Yeah, but you're minimizing it. That's exactly what you're doing when you conflate the two things. When you're saying, oh, but boarding school people got the strap as well. No, absolutely, you're minimizing it. Absolutely.
Outrage against any institution that predates our temporarily constructed moral sensibilities. But what really drove our perception of this period of history into a hysterical pitch was, if you believe the headlines of every major news outlet who carried the story, and they seemingly all did, the discovery of a mass grave of children at the site of a formal residential school in Kamloops, BC. 3 years ago, the band council there issued a statement that they had discovered the remains of 215 children buried on the school's grounds through the use of ground-penetrating radar.
Okay, so first off, is that true? Is that what they ran? Surprise, he's lying. Right? He's absolutely lying. So here's the thing. Nobody sort of nobody actually said mass graves. Right. So this wasn't a, hang on a second, I had it in my history a second ago. Nobody actually, or very few news organizations said mass graves. This is the thing. And I'll find the, okay. Yeah, there's the conversation. All right. So the fact check on this, right? So the denialists will say, oh, it's a mass grave hoax. This is what the denialists are sort of going for at the moment, right? How did I just so a politician from a village in Prince Edward Island in Canada displayed a defensive sign which said there is a mass grave hoax. Many called for him to resign. Commentary that a hoax exists began circulating in 2021. Now, this video from Holdsworth is from a month ago. I'm not even joking. It was from a month ago, right? This isn't an old video from 2021. He's still doing it. Commentators say that they have misrepresented the news and using the term mass grave to do so. Now, the fact check says that they analysed 386 news articles across 5 Canadian media outlets. They found, according to their evidence of their study, they found that most mainstream media did not use the term mass graves, right? They didn't use that term. What they said was unmarked graves, not mass graves. So he actually is just lying. And so in order for them to say, for instance, oh, it's a mass grave hoax, they're making up, first off, that the media said they were mass graves. No, they didn't. They didn't. So what happened here? Public confusion over the 2021 Kamloops, that's Kamloops, basically. Kamloops Sekwamam. It's a First Nation. I'm sorry I'm butchering those names. Sekwapamuk, First Nation announcement. They had preliminary findings regarding the remains of 215 children. This was ground-penetrating radar. The First Nation clarified the findings as confirmation of the likely presence of children, and they called them the missing, right? So the thing was, this entire thing started when the Secwepemc, and I'm so sorry I'm butchering that name, they reported children that had gone missing, right? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission noted its register of missing children was incomplete, partly due to a large volume of yet to be examined and destroyed records. And they had a call for sort of them to find the missing children of the First Nations, right? It wasn't like they found them first. They have missing children. In the 2 years since, a number of commentators, priests, thanks Brian Holdsworth, and politicians, they downplayed the harms of residential schooling or questioned the validity, gravity, and significance of the missing. One National Post commentator wrote the account of a mass grave was reported almost universally. It was not, despite the First Nations and mountains never mentioning a mass grave. And Chief Roseanne Casimir, who was a First Nations chief, saying in a news conference, this is not a mass grave, but rather an unmarked burial sites that are, to our knowledge, also undocumented. Some may have even wrongly suggested First Nation announced the discovery of mass grave, and this was a fake news story. So the First Nations made every possible attempt to say, hey, this is not a mass grave. Of the Theo accurately reported it, a minority contained some inaccurate, 35%, 135 articles contained some inaccurate or misleading reporting. However, many of the detected inaccuracies are even understood as mistakes, and most were corrected over time, as is common practice in breaking news within the journalism industry. Yeah, so some of them got it wrong, and some were corrected, and maybe some weren't corrected. But here's sort of thing of the entire media reported this. Absolutely not. It is a lie. It is an absolute lie and disinformation. And Brian Holdsworth is a bad Canadian, a bad Canadian. So this is all started when the First Nations, they reported children that were taken to still be missing, still missing. Insane.
Proving that not only were residential schools a mistake, they were in fact the instrument of mass murder or even genocide executed by the Catholic Church.
Okay, so remember when I told you to remember that phrase, cultural genocide? Okay, cultural genocide. It was referred to in most things as a possible cultural genocide, an attempt to destroy the culture of the First Nations people. Nobody said it was an actual genocide, and nobody said it was mass murder, right? Why are you making this shit up, Brian Holdsworth? You are making it up because nobody said that. Nobody said it was mass murder, and nobody said it was a genocide. Nobody except you guys. What this tactic is basically what you do is you take something like, for instance, when something happens, oh, well, it's, an egregious affront of the church to have these schools abusing children, and B, forcible removal and conversion of their children, both culturally and religiously, to the Catholic way of thinking, Catholic culture and Catholic religion, right? That's what they're saying. And when they say cultural genocide, they're not talking about an actual genocide. They're talking about they're destroying their culture because the kids can't learn the culture of the First Nations, right? So, but you say, hey, you said it was a genocide and no genocide actually went on. No, nobody said that. Nobody said that. Oh, you said they were mass murdered. No, nobody said that. Nobody said that. But what you do is you blow it out of proportion. You get something that nobody has accused the church of, and then go, see, that didn't happen, so none of the rest of it is true as well. They said it was a mass murder, and no murders happened, so therefore they couldn't have been abused because they were wrong about this. They're also wrong about the abuse. You are a bad Canadian, sir, and you should be absolutely, like this video is like, I could be arrested for this. You should be arrested for this, sir. You should be. This is blatant disinformation. This is blatant sort of atrocity denial on the worst level, you horrible person.
Confirming all the worst suspicions that everyone who already hated the church might harbor in secret, but can now boast about in polite society. And in the
I don't harbor harbor the dislike for the church in secret. I don't harbor anything. I speak openly about my dislike for the church. A lot of people do. A lot of people do. Like, we've got to remember that this isn't the first time the Catholic Church has wandered up to the sorry pulpit, is it? This isn't the first time the Catholic Church has been in hot water for the atrocities in the past. Is this the first time? No, it's not, is it? There's been some, I don't know, few people that have suffered from the Catholic Church recently. Some altar boys come to mind. Why are you defending them is more of the question. The amount of damage this one institution has done is incredible. I don't know. I am hard-pressed to think of any institution which has done as much harm as the Catholic Church over the course of its run.
Immediate aftermath of that apparently horrifying discovery, the Catholic Church in Canada pledged $30 million as an act of reparation for this unambiguous crime against humanity.
Yeah. The Catholic Church says, yes, absolutely, this is an unambiguous crime against humanity, and we pledged 30 million. But what Brian's trying to do is he's trying to say, hey, they made reparations for this mass murder and no mass murder happened. Nobody's saying mass murder happened, you colossal twit. Nobody's saying that. We're saying that, hey, you destroyed a culture and forcibly took children and forcibly converted them while abuse went on in those schools which were responsible for their well-being. You absolute twat.
And then the Pope himself, at the insistence of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, traveled to Canada to apologize for these atrocities. Simultaneously, over 100 churches were vandalized or burned to the ground in a wave of hatred directed towards Christians that spread across the country.
Yeah, I don't think it was 100. I don't think it was 100. I think it was about 35. 85. So yeah, at least 100. No, it was 85. It was 85. And people were charged for that. Nobody is saying that, I don't condone violence. I don't think you can solve a problem like this through violence. I don't condone that either. But sort of saying, hey, I don't understand why people are angry. That's not going to, even your Pope apologized for it. What is your problem? Is the Pope wrong? Is the Pope wrong, Brian Holdsworth? Is the Pope wrong on this one? Is God's messenger on earth wrong on this one? Is that the story? I'd love to hear him answer that. Is the Pope wrong? Apparently the Pope got it wrong. I mean, that's what he's implicitly saying. But no, the Pope and the Catholic records, they absolutely realize that this was an atrocity against humanity. It's not even close to being, debatable. And of course, Pope Francis, if there's one thing you've got to say about him, he seems to be very aware of the problems that the church has in regards to the atrocities kind of thing. And the Catholic Church, they're just spinning it. They're just spinning it.
And let's be clear, These acts and gestures were made as a result of the discovery of 215 bodies of apparently murdered children. There had already been a commission to study the...
No, nobody said murdered, Brian. Why are you misrepresenting the facts? Nobody said murdered. Nobody said murdered. We found unmarked graves, not mass graves. The First Nations chiefs made it perfectly clear it was unmarked graves and not mass graves. So that's one lie. That's one denialist lie that you're putting out there. Murdered. Nobody said they were murdered. So why are you putting that out there? Nobody has said murdered. But if this is the tactic. You basically say, oh, well, there was atrocity. Oh, they're mass graves. They're murdered. It's a genocide. But we didn't find evidence of mass graves murdering or a genocide. So it couldn't have happened. So none of it could have happened. No. You guys are terrible. And this is the tactic they're doing.
Evils of residential schools, which had issued reports that had been exhaustively covered.
No, I totally understand. I did have a disclaimer before, Austin, that usually my fundamentalist files are laughing at fundamentalists, but this one is a bit more serious. I was horrified when I found this out. So I get you, mate. Like, do take care of yourself. And that applies to everybody, actually. If you feel like your well-being is suffering watching me, then go find something happier. Go find something, a bit more uplifting. I don't want your mental health or your mental well-being to suffer because of this. I really don't. Yeah, absolutely, aren't you? Yeah, take care of yourself. I absolutely. But I feel like I've got to do this. I feel compelled to do this. And I am not pointing a finger at Canada and going, oh, bad Canada, look what you did. Australia was probably worse. We call them the stolen generation for a reason. An entire generation was converted to Christianity and their culture destroyed. I totally understand. I totally understand.
In the public eye, for which many apologies and settlements had already been made. The recent escalation of anti-Catholic hatred and contrition from the church came as a result of the news that had erupted out of Kamloops and was carried by every media outlet around the world with a kind of almost morbid elation. Canadian...
No, there's not a morbid elation. There is the whole problem is that the Catholic Church has been responsible for some of the greatest atrocities in history. Like, for instance, I'll point one out: denying condoms to people in Africa during the AIDS epidemic. Okay? Like, basically telling them that you shouldn't use condoms because they're bad for you and they're horrible and they're evil and they're all these things. It made the AIDS epidemic that much worse. They are responsible for that. That is what they did over there. Right? The terrifying levels of abuse, and not just abuse of children, moving the priests around so they wouldn't be accountable for their crimes. The Catholic Church did that. That is documented. Yeah. They told them that condoms would spread AIDS. Yep. And this, like I said, this is not the Catholic Church's first foray onto the sorry pulpit. Pope Francis knows that they are responsible for that many atrocities, and he is there. He was selected to be Pope to do damage control, to basically go around and apologize for the Catholic Church and say we're sorry and we didn't mean it and we didn't know any better. It is horrendous. It is horrendous. And that, my friend, and Sydney knows, that was an atrocity. So George Pell was found and convicted by a jury of his peers, guilty for not only covering up that children were abused, yes, abused like that, but also did it himself. Now, Pell hung out for a while with the Pope, and he is the Pope's bookkeeper, or was the Pope's bookkeeper before he died. Now, that sentence was overturned by the High Court in Australia, which is horrendous. That is horrendous. That is disgusting. And so many people are still mad about that. That this is the Catholic Church. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, Alex. The amount that they have done, as I said, I don't know of any institution that has done so much harm as them. They have also done good things. Does that outweigh the harm? I don't think so. I think that any other religious institution that had done the things that the Catholic Church had done would be packed up and told to shut down. I really do. I honestly believe that. It's not right. But this sort of revisionism of history is disgusting.
And legislators also responded by lowering flags to half-mast at all federal and provincial facilities and immediately pledged over $60 million in funding to search the grounds of various sites for more bodies. Now, some 3 years later, not a single body of a missing child has been exhumed.
Okay, so remember what he said there. Not a single body of a missing child has been exhumed. Right? Not a single body. So he's suggesting not a single body has been found, but he uses exhumed in a very interesting way there, right? In a very interesting way, because he's saying exhumed. All right, this is CBC News, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is actually a neutral corporation kind of thing. So human remains found near Alberta, residential school site, likely children. So Saddle Lake, there were numerous discoveries of partial remains that were accidentally excavated while new graves were being dug in the community cemetery. It's about 170 kilometers north of Edmonton. While community members who discovered the remains were at the time unsure about what they found and reburied them, a team tasked with investigating burial sites connected to the school now believes it's uncovering the shallow, unmarked graves of children between the ages of 4 and 10 that perished at the school. These were children's-sized skeleton remains that were excavated. None of these skeleton remains were in caskets. Last year, the Saddle Cree formed the, I can't even pronounce that, Asimoan Opasable Society to investigate possible burial sites. Lead investigator and residential school survivor Eric Large began compiling witness statements from community members who had discovered bodies, spoke to the people. The Catholic Church records obtained by investigators show that 212 students died in the, roughly 41 years. Sorry, that's 33 years. This number vastly outstrips federal records, which accounted for about 25 student deaths. Their own Catholic Church records, show the children dying. They keep a tally of the children dying, and they found their actual burial sites. I don't know what Brian Holdsworth is smoking, but he needs to snap the F out of it, quite frankly. That is 6 children a year. I'm not even joking. Do the math. That's 6 children a year dying in these schools. A year. I mean, what are we talking about here? The burial records are for the parish, not specifically for the school. Neither registers nor burial accounts for the school has been found. Hey, of course they haven't. 2004, it believes to be mass grave. So that was a lot earlier in 2004. We're really talking about the time between 2000 and 21. So in Kamloops, the ground panning radar has detected more than 200 potential burial sites. And so this Kamloops thing, it isn't indicative of all of the other human remains that have been found, right? Like it doesn't actually show all of the other stuff. So Dunbow Industrial School, remains of 39 children's bodies, right? So they did find, the search continued to identify
before
the
there
bodies
were
of children.
residential schools in Canada, there were
They continue to identify the bodies of children being found buried. They have bodies, right? They have the remains. Lucy Sinclair, this girl of the Blackfoot tribe was well disposed, learned English very quickly. She would have made a good servant girl, a diligent and neat worker. She suffered from a hip disease, fell into consumption, from which she died. Now, that is their own records, the own Catholic school records. Lucy Sinclair from the Blackfoot tribe. Rip Lucy. In total, 430 students from First Nations across Alberta attended. Dunbow Industrial School was also known as St. Joseph's Industrial School during its 38 years of operation. Most were Siksika or Susina. At that time, Blackfoot and Saki. Sasi. 1 in 6 died while attending the school. 1 in 6 children died attending this school. Like, this is from their own records. So this was students who died at the school were buried in the cemetery near the river's edge. In 1996, the flooding high water river eroded the bank. Caskets and bones spilled into the river and began washing away the remains. So this is sort of a common theme that sort of we only knew about them when a river has sort of excavated the remains. They put 2 or 3 bodies in one coffin and then they buried them in that way. Since the remains washed down to the river, they're probably still in the river. Documents she collected show that children were stripped of their native clothing and made to wear Western attire. Each was assigned a Christian name and given a number. These fascists and their numbering people, it's just, yeah. The remains of the 34 students were located and reinterred at a site several meters away from the river. So the whole idea, the whole idea that they haven't found any bodies is a massive lie by Holdsworth. Massive lie. 100% a lie. We actually have, and sometimes accidentally. I think there was another one where that happened. The river sort of broke its banks, and unmarked graves were found. Because very few people are saying mass graves. They weren't like, so what's the difference? A mass grave is when all the bodies are thrown into a pit, basically. That's a mass grave, right? These are unmarked graves. They're buried individually. Like the other thing said, they weren't in coffins, but they were buried individually. That's an unmarked grave, right? So we have a problem with unmarked graves that we don't know they're there. Their family can't mourn them. Don't forget, these schools were intentionally set up far away from their tribe. So they would be taken a long way so they couldn't, run away to their tribe, or their tribe couldn't come and try and rescue them. Like, real horrific stuff. So, yeah, there was another one that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so that was St. Joseph's Industrial School. A lot of them were sort of, they're doing ground penetrating radar, and they're sort of saying, hey, there's possible graves, or probable, right? Probable graves, basically. This is sort of, but everywhere that we've sort of said this, we're basically getting more and more of these bodies. Yeah, come home, Cardinal Pell. Yeah, so if you're unaware, Cardinal Pell was a fantastic accountant. He was really good with money. Who would have thought? Catholic bishop, good with money. Who would have thought? So basically, he was essentially the Pope's personal accountant, essentially. He handled church finances. So what the Pope did, and I think it wasn't Pope Francis, it was Pope John Paul, was, while all of these allegations were going down, he kind of let him stay in the Vatican and didn't extradite him. Tim Minchin, cool, clever, and talented as fuck. Yeah, absolutely. And comes from my state, Austin. He comes from the same state I do. Western Australian. What a guy. You'll probably hear it in the accent. I've got kind of a similar accent to him. You may or may not notice it. But yeah, like Tim Minchin sounds a little English. People think Western Australians are a bit English because we sound a little bit English. Same with Tim Minchin. He's got a Western Australian accent, not an English one.
From any of the sites where these radar scans were performed anywhere in the country. And the longer that time goes on, the weaker the claim of the remains of any children gets.
No, it doesn't, because they have been found. Like this kind of thing. So what he's trying to do is say, hey, they did ground penetrating radar, found hundreds of probable or possible sites, but none of them have been exhumed. And that's true. In some cases, they said, leave them where they lie. We don't want to disturb their remains. But he's trying to conflate here and say, well, no remains have been found. That's not true. That is 100% not true. 100%.
Pause and think about that for a second. Between church tithes and taxpayer dollars, we're probably close to $100 million dedicated to finding the remains of the alleged victims. But we are yet to find a single one.
That is an outright lie. That's an outright lie. We have the records from St. Joseph's Industrial School. Your own Catholic records say 1 in 6 children that attended that school died and were buried. And sometimes they were buried. We know this because the river broke the banks and flooded it. They were buried, sometimes 3 people in a grave, which does not qualify as a mass grave, but definitely was an unmarked grave. That is 100% a lie, and this man is a bad Canadian.
The likely explanation is that there are no remains at the site of the school in Kamloops or elsewhere. The likely explanation is that the church sincerely established schools not for the intent of committing genocide, but to teach.
Nobody said they established the schools to commit genocide. Nobody said that. This is the thing that Brian Holdsworth is doing. He's trying to say, hey, they just established schools to commit genocide, did they? How unrealistic does that sound? He's trying to prey on the incredulity of people by exacerbating the crime to ludicrous standards and then saying, well, it's ridiculous to think they would have done that. Nobody said they did that. Nobody. I don't believe that the Catholics established these schools in order to murder children. I think that they wanted to convert them and use brutal methods to do so. Some possibly died of their injuries, which isn't murder, that's manslaughter. And a lot of the time they were neglected. And that is neglect, not murder. But, you know, the whole framing that he is doing is reprehensible. Absolutely reprehensible.
Indigenous children what they would need to learn to adapt to a quickly modernizing world. All that was discovered.
They did not need Catholicism to adapt to a quickly modernizing world. They did not need Catholicism. But in all cases, they were forced to convert and pray and, you know, do the services. They were absolutely forced. Absolutely forced.
At the Kamloops site was soil disturbances in an area with known archival records of septic fields being dug in that exact.
No, it didn't. Show us these records of septic tanks being dug in the area, because what we do have is records of underreporting of the deaths in those systems. When we dig up the records, the Catholic Church did not report the deaths they ought to have to the government. They are like that shows, like from the 200 and something kids found, that they only reported 25, a tenth of the students that actually died. Yeah, absolutely disgusting. This man is a bad Canadian.
Spot. But when GP radar surveys discovered soil disturbances, the conclusion that was immediately adopted without question was the Catholic Church must have buried murdered children here. What does that say?
No, that was not what they said. No, absolutely not. That is not what they said. They didn't immediately, like, they were very tenuous. They said some were almost certainly unmarked graves, some were probable, some were, possible, but they didn't just jump to the conclusion that the Catholic Church murdered people here. This is his tactic. He will blow things out of proportion and say, oh, but that's ridiculous. The Catholic Church murdered children and stuffed them in graves. That's ridiculous. Nobody is saying that.
About everyone who jumps to that conclusion with little to no evidence supporting it, not to mention those who are still clinging to that narrative today. That would be like getting...
The people that are clinging to that narrative today is you. That's you. That's you, Brian. That is absolutely you. 100% you. You're the only person pushing this narrative. And the only reason he is pushing the narrative of, oh, the media said there was unmarked graves, was so that he can basically use it to conflate between genocide and nothing at all. It was either genocide or it's nothing happened. That's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying.
A survey done on your property before you did some digging or construction or something like that. And when they found anomalies or soil disturbances, they immediately assumed that unidentified missing children had been buried there and charged you as the owner of the home with their murder without ever exhuming the ground.
Nobody charged the Catholic Church with their murder. And the reparations that the Catholic Church had to pay was for the forced taking of people's children and forcefully converting them to their religion. This is ridiculous that he would try and do apologetics on stealing a generation of children away from the native, like, so the missing children of people. Oh, but they didn't murder them, so why pay reparations? You ask. This man is a terrible human being.
See if there were in fact bodies there. How do you get from the detection of soil disturbances in a septic field to the claim that you found 215 bodies of children?
Well, mostly through the other schools and the Catholic school records, which show that a bunch of children died and Catholics buried them in unmarked graves and didn't report it to the frigging government. And when the river broke its banks in another school, bodies came out. Could that give you any clue?
What an incredibly reckless claim to make, and what an incredibly reckless story.
It's not reckless. The people that were doing the ground penetrating radar were very clear on whether they were unmarked graves, that they had a certainty about it, whether it was probable, whether it was possible, or whether it was a disturbance. You're basically saying, well, don't believe the people that do this for a living. Who can trust ground penetrating radar? But we don't have to. We've got the Catholic school records that show that 1 in 6 children died attending a school. We've got bodies being washed away. We've got all of this evidence, and you want to say, oh, but they haven't found a single one. Wow. Robin Webster, $2. Sounds like he is making a guilty admission. No, what he's trying to do, is sort of, it's almost a childish thing, like, sort of going, your brother, for instance. You have a brother, he's a bit of an ass, and he sort of gives you a push, and you go, Mom, he hit me in the face, and absolutely hit me in the face over and over and over. And she's like, yeah, right, like he did that. It's kind of that blowing it out of proportion in order to say, oh no, I just messed his face up kind of thing. Yeah, it downplays the severity. It's denialism 101. This couldn't have happened because there's no way the Catholic Church would do X, Y, Z. Well, number one, I am no longer surprised by what the Catholic Church would or would not do in protection of their church. Like, seriously. I thought moving reprehensible abusers around was the low point for the church, but apparently not. Apparently that's not the low point.
for our media to report without any shred of investigative scrutiny. And has anyone apologized in the midst of all of this? So far, just the church has, as far as I know. Because regardless of the evidence available, it would seem that most people, especially our elites, would rather believe that the church is evil than the
elites would rather believe the church is evil. Well, actually, I've got a bit of a problem with the way the elites protect the church again and again. Please refer to my earlier comments about Cardinal Pell having the High Court declare him innocent after being convicted by a jury of his peers. Is that somehow the elites protecting the church? Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. And I have a problem with that. And sort of the idea that, oh, you just want to hate the church. No, I don't. I realize that Catholics have done some very good things for people. I know some tremendously good Catholics with kind hearts, and they want to help people, and they don't try to forcefully convert people. But your institution has a history, a long history of doing this, and you're just trying to cover it up. And at over 100,000 subscribers, this man should be ashamed of himself. Absolutely ashamed of himself. This is denialism 101.
more evident opposite conclusion, and possibly even worse, for some reason, the church's leaders would rather not challenge that perception for fear that it...
They damn well know it's true. Have you ever thought about that? Their leaders won't challenge it because they know it's true. They've got access to the records. They probably knew about it before the public did. And that's a problem too. The Catholic Church has had a long history of saying, don't let the public know, we will deal with this internally. And the internal solution is always the same for the Catholic Church, and that is to protect the Catholic Church. That is what they've always done. So these absolute douche nozzles in their funny little hats 100% knew what was going on and knew what had happened. And they've been found out. They've been found out.
Might mean that they have to actually stand their ground for once. And now there is a bill before Parliament that would amend our criminal code, making it a criminal offense to down...
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, they happen to be Catholic and are also good people. But, you know, we're not talking about the people. We're talking about the institution as represented by its leaders and its ongoing accountability to making itself better. And this man is not helping, because this denialism of what happened in the past is just, it's rotten. It's absolutely rotten to the core. He has lied again and again in this video. And I'm not going to stay silent.
Play the Indian residential school system as an act of willful hatred against Indigenous people. The word downplay means to reduce the fullness of measure of something. But how can it be possible to reduce the measure of something when we have no idea what that measurement is? We have no standard of measurement that we're drawing from. In other words, there has to be some established truth beyond any reasonable doubt that...
There is established truth beyond any reasonable doubt. It's just that Brian Holdsworth is doing damage control for the church. And he thinks it's convincing people. This never happened. This never happened. Has he at least said sorry once for what we absolutely know with no question of a doubt, that the Catholic Church took native Canadians, put them in boarding schools where they were forced to convert and suffered from, as he said, punishments that happened in boarding schools at the time, all the time? No, he hasn't said sorry once. He hasn't said, hey, I understand this is horrible for those First Nations and their children's culture was destroyed. No, he doesn't care. He only cares about the Catholic Church. That's all he cares about.
One might be able to downplay. But events from history are never so black and white, especially when you're trying to extract some kind of moral evaluation from them.
That's funny, Mr. Atheists Have Bad... what was this video called? The Dictatorship of Relativism. So apparently Brian Holdsworth, according to his own standard, is a dictator because he's using moral relativism. It's always great to use moral relativism when your church is in trouble, but when a pesky atheist says, hey, I don't think the churches should be special, that's when you know, you have the objective moral standard, right, Brian? That's when objective morals will suddenly jump from nowhere.
especially in a world that has no objective moral standard to draw from. So basically, if this law passed,
from a world that has no objective moral standard to draw from. So he's saying, hey, I have objective morals, but don't judge the leaders of my church with the objective morals that I have. Judge them with the subjective morals that you have. What is wrong with this man? And what is wrong with this picture? You are claiming that your Catholic Church is the representative church, the holy church of the divine power of objective morality, but they can't implement that objective morality. What is wrong with you, dude? Seriously. You're basically saying, hey, there's objective morality, but we don't have it. Never did. Then how is it any better than our subjective morality? You want to claim that because of your holy book, you have access to the objective morality of God. But now he has tacitly said, well, we don't have access to any objective morality, so you can't judge us with an objective moral standard. Then what use is your objective morality? Then you don't have objective morality. Wow, I've never seen a objective, like a moral realist, go to presentism. No, that's a lie, actually. I've seen praise I am that I am that I am that I am go from objective morality to moral to presentism, which is moral relativism, like that. And it's hilarious they don't understand it's moral relativism.
It will just be a weapon to use against anyone who says something about residential schools that people with political power don't like. To make claims like Bishop Grandin was a heroic figure of Canadian history and probably deserving of canonization is something that I, as a Catholic, talking about my own Catholic faith and my own Catholic heritage, could probably be charged for in the future. To ask questions like, why haven't any bodies been exhumed at the site where it was factually claimed that the remains of 215 children were found, could be a criminal offense.
Yeah, so yeah, the government is making a criminal offense for denialism. This is not without precedent around the world. Okay, and I'll explain what I mean. It's not without precedent. Germany did the same thing for the Holocaust, right? Germany did the same thing, made denialism illegal. And considering the amount of misinformation and disinformation, rather, that this guy is pumping out, he is absolutely, like, he probably should be arrested, in my opinion. I really wish there was some kind of, I mean, in Australia we have ombudsman, but some kind of neutral institution to hold media accountable for what they say. Somehow we have got to address that, say, Fox News will just publish misinformation. They will publish, it's disinformation. They know it's wrong and they'll still publish it. We have example after example after example of stuff like this. It is basically coming out and saying it. Now, the precedent in Germany, that is a precedent. Canada can do that. They can make denialism illegal, which makes that what he is doing right now probably illegal. I don't know if that bill has gone through. But this man has got over 100,000 followers, and he's telling them all of this is a conspiracy against the Catholic Church. It's not right. It's not right. I think Bill C413. I think it's just a bill at the moment. The first reading. So This is Bill C413. So this enactment amends the criminal code to create an offence of willfully promoting hatred against Indigenous peoples by condoning, denying. So I think he would have violated by condoning those schools, denying, which he has done, downplaying, which he has done, or justifying, and that's the one he's really done, the Indian residential school system, Canada, through statements communicated other than in private conversation. So he's sort of saying, hey, if you say something about, this person is a great man, you can be arrested. No, that's not what it says. It's basically justifying the Indian residential school system, or condoning it, saying it was a good thing, or saying that it didn't happen, these deaths didn't happen, or downplaying it. And the act to amend, I don't know if this got through. It's in first reading. Okay, so it's just been read out. Let's see, September 26th. Okay. Yes, up to 2 years. No person shall be convicted of an offence under subsection 2.2 if they establish the statements communicated were true. I've busted at least 3 or 4 so far. If in good faith they expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject, or an opinion based upon a belief in religious text. So the idea that your guy that was almost beatified would probably get an exemption under it. So that's not true as well. If the statements were relevant to any subject of public interest, the discussion of which was for the public benefit, and if on reasonable grounds they believed them to be true. I don't think he believes them to be true. I think that he knows that there's horrible stuff here and he's doing damage control. If in good faith they intended to point out for the purpose of removal matters produce feelings of hatred towards people. Yeah, okay. So that's basically what's going up for, and yeah, you have the free speech people going, oh, but, we're not allowed to say stuff. What you are saying is lies and it shouldn't be supported. It should not be supported. Stop lying.
A claim that prompted the Pope to apologize in person, the allocation of an incomprehensible fortune of Catholic and taxpayer money.
Let's talk about the fortune of Catholic and taxpayer money. Do the Catholics pay tax? I'm sorry. Do the Catholics pay tax? No, they don't. They pay no taxes whatsoever. If we want to talk about your institution and financial benefit, the Catholic Church rakes in millions and millions and millions and pays zero in tax. None whatsoever. And most of it goes to the Vatican for the bloody Pope's big fat fortune. No. You don't get to say, hey, we had to pay reparations for something that clearly happened. But you're saying, oh, well, the genocide didn't happen, so we shouldn't have to pay. It wasn't for a genocide. It was for the cultural genocide, the destruction of a culture. How much is a culture worth, do you think? How much is a culture's worth? Like all of the traditions and history and sort of the memories and the rituals and the celebrations. How much is that worth? How much is a language worth? Canadian taxes do go to Catholic schools. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that these schools were supported by the government, right? So the Catholics were running them with financial aid from the Canadian people at the time. They were being funded by Canadians. So when you hear that 10 times the amount of children died, according to the Catholic records, that were told to the government, you have questions, right? Like, why the F weren't you accurately reporting the amount of deaths? And they have all kinds of excuses. Oh, there was a typhoid epidemic and all of this kind of stuff. you buried them in unmarked graves. You didn't even give them a proper burial. And the bodies from St. Joseph's, there was 3 in a grave. And most of them in another section where the remains were found didn't even have coffins. They just dumped them in a shallow grave, not even marked. You know, and I feel like if that happened to the Catholics, they would be wild about it. You know, imagine if it was white Catholic children that died, you know, at a reservation, and the inhabitants just threw them in a shallow grave and didn't report it to the authorities. It would be a different story then, wouldn't it?
Hundreds of churches vandalized, and the shame of Canadians and Catholics worldwide. I honestly wish we could talk about abuses that took place. I wish people who suffered could tell their stories and have those stories acknowledged with composure and sympathy. I wish the church could wrestle with her actual mistakes and even crimes if they existed and learn from them rather than.
Yeah, you wish. No, you don't. No, you don't, because there were crimes committed here, crimes against humanity, which the Pope has acknowledged. Like the taking of all of these children and destroying their culture, beating them, forcing them to speak a different language, forcing them to convert to their bankrupt religion. That is a crime. It's a crime against humanity. The Pope has acknowledged it. You're saying the Pope's wrong. You're a bad Canadian.
Giving every concession to a sensationalist story and thereby avoiding her actual faults. Instead, I would.
No. There was no sensationalist story. You made it up. You guys made it up. When it came out that we had found a few graves, you guys made up that they reported that there were mass graves when they never did. They never did. You guys made up the sensationalist story and then said, oh, look, this story is sensationalist. They're saying there's mass graves and there's no mass grave. Nobody said there was mass graves, or, you know, a small number of them. And most of them were corrected. Brian Holdsworth is an absolute liar. Just a liar.
Argue that we've further victimized the victims by turning their experience into this extravagant, legendary tale about genocide. Like, imagine if you suffered a.
Nobody said. So the only record I could find of genocide was some papers reporting a cultural genocide, a attempt for the church to take children away from their tribe as far as possible. Like they would send them to one of these schools really far away. They would stop them from practicing their culture. They would tell them that their language was the devil's tongue. They weren't allowed to speak it. And they would enforce that with violence, right? So they were attempting to, I mean, he even admits it himself. Oh, well, they had to adapt to the culture of the settlers or else they would die from starvation or whatever. Number one, I don't think that's true. I think that the colonizers could have provided food and other materials without getting them converted and destroying their culture. Number two, you just admitted, like, they only said cultural genocide, but this is what people like this do. They will say, oh, you said it was a genocide and they're still here. No, a cultural genocide. You idiot. It has been read. I'm not sure of the state of it at the moment. It's a private member's bill. It went through, the first reading was September 26th, 2024. So I presume it's been read in the House of Commons, but it has not been voted upon yet. That's what I'm assuming from this. I don't exactly know how it works. Give me one sec. Okay. So promotion of hatred against Indigenous people. So this is where it's at, basically. So it's in the House of Commons. It's been read for the first time in sitting 344. It hasn't reached second reading or committee. Okay, so it's definitely not it's not even close to being passed at the moment. I mean, it's not far, but depending on how fast this goes, which I don't think will will sort of actually, I don't think that'll be fast. But, whether it passes or not, I don't know.
Produced by someone in your neighborhood, and you wanted someone to recognize that. You wouldn't told your story to someone, but for political purposes and media sensationalism, some absurd legend was constructed about a religious cult kidnapping and eating children in your neighborhood.
Did you hear that? Did you see what he did there? Some narrative being created about a religious cult kidnapping and eating children. Is that remotely what was reported upon? Is that even remotely what was reported upon? What is it with this black and white thinking of it has got to be the most heinous crime in the history of humanity or it didn't happen? And that's how he's presenting this. It's basically trying to appeal, so he's talking to Catholics because he knows, this man 100% knows that Catholics will find this objectionable and start to leave the church. He knows. He 100% knows. So he's trying to appeal to their incredulity by basically making it absurd. Oh, the Catholics just kidnapped children and ate them. No, nobody said that. Not one person said that. Not one person did. But yeah, it's there for Catholics to go, yeah, that's ridiculous. He's trying to appeal to that sense of incredulity to make them dismiss everything. Children kidnapped is actually correct. I mean, they were said, oh, we've got to provide for these children and sort of, they're not doing well in the reservations and stuff. Let's take care of them. But their goal was to convert them. 100% that was their goal. If they had really worried about the welfare of the children, they would have kept them near their families, let them practice their culture, let them talk in their native language. They would have done all that, but it wasn't. Their goal was the conversion of the native Canadian people. That was their goal. And like I said, is it really humanitarian if you're doing missionary work? Because you're not doing it for the humans, you're doing it for God.
Neighborhood. That kind of hysterical narrative does nothing to restore justice to victims.
That hysterical narrative is yours. It's your narrative. Nobody who is saying, hey, bodies have been found, is saying that cultists came, kidnapped the children and ate them. Nobody's saying that. You're saying that. And you're saying that to make it sound like it's ridiculous that this happened, when clearly it did.
Only creates a frenzy of indignation and outrage that refuses to appreciate the real victims who have real stories to tell. In fact, requiring the narrative...
Yeah, and this, oh, well, I'm on the victim side, is just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
To become so unrestrained implies that you wouldn't care about the victims unless they were able to fabricate such an elaborate, unbelievable mythology out of their experiences.
They didn't fabricate an unbelievable mythology. You fabricated the unbelievable mythology and ascribed it to their stories. But guess what? We've got the Catholic school records which show the deaths. We don't need their stories. You guys told them to us. It's absolutely horrible. This is reprehensibly bad.
In closing, I'll leave you with a portrait of the infamous Kamloops Residential School, the same school where 215 children's bodies were supposedly found, but never actually found. This comes from a website called Indian Residential School Records.com, which I highly recommend people spend some time just clicking around to get associated with this history. In one section, you can search through records of class reunions. At the class reunion of the Kamloops Residential School, you can read about the two-day event held in 1977 for over 280 former staff and students who traveled from all over the province to attend with some apparent enthusiasm. These are the same people that polite Canadian society insists are survivors of cultural genocide. The event included Indian dancing with Ernie Phillips, slides of the, quote, good old days presented by Father Noonan, where many of the students would recognize themselves, more slides presented by former Indigenous teacher Benny Paul, bone games, and a salmon barbecue and dance. The guest book of this reunion was signed by over 280 people with the inscription in the preface that says, this simple booklet will contain the names of people who chose to come together out of sentiment to meet with each other, to reminisce, and to mark the near end of an institution which represents a significant historical era in the lives of Native Indian people. Now,
Yeah. So here's the thing, and this is more of this black and white thinking, that because the some of the people came back for a reunion, that everything's okay. That everything's just okay. It is possible for a boarding school to do horrible things and the students still go to a reunion and think it's great. But that doesn't take away the fact that you still have their parents who are missing them, that they were torn from their own culture. And just because they, they wanted to see their classmates and had this nostalgia about their time doesn't make it right that you took them from their parents. I could take you from your parents, put you in a boarding school and whip Muslim stuff into you. You may still go back to a reunion and say it was a significant time in my life. And you may be happy to see all of the people that you got through your experience with. You're basically saying, hey, some people have good memories, therefore nothing bad could have happened. How does that follow, Brian Holdsworth? How the hell does that work? Especially when you have people coming out and saying, hey, I was beaten for speaking my native language. I was abused. Survivors of hex abuse. So how does that work? Did that just never happen because some people happen to have a good time? And when you say, oh, a significant experience, that doesn't mean good. And they recognize pictures of themselves. Yeah. If you go through trauma with people, the reunion with those people is often happy, is often very happy. People that have been through abusive school systems, when they get together, they absolutely love seeing those people because it forms a bond with them. That doesn't mean the experience is good. It just means that they really love the people that got through it with them. Hey, Max, good to see you, mate. Yeah. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I don't know why I said that. You're obviously subscribed. Don't forget to like. And that goes for the rest of you people as well. 100% cuddly. I agree. Yeah, it's a bit of a depressing one as well, Max. I don't blame you, mate. It's very, very, but it's up to us to remember this and to push back on people like this man who will lie for his church.
If residential schools, and especially this now infamous Kamloops residential school, were really the machinery of genocide everyone has come to believe.
No, nobody said it was genocide. They said it was cultural genocide. They said that the kids were forced to wear clothing by the colonizers. They were forced to speak English. They were forced to convert to Catholicism. They're not talking about a literal genocide. They're talking about the destruction of the culture. And I mean, this guy is such an idiot. He's just making this narrative and then saying, oh, you believe it was a genocide. I didn't say that. Nobody said that. You said that. We said cultural genocide, meaning they tried to destroy their culture. What an ass.
They are. Why would anyone ever come back to the place of their ordeal to reminisce about the good old days?
Yeah, because the people in it. Yeah, because the people in it are significant when you go through trauma. The people you survive with. Why do soldiers who go through absolute trauma get together with their old war buddies and reminisce? It must have been fantastic, right? It must have been fantastic to be on the front, because all of these soldiers, they just get together with their buddies and reminisce about the war. You idiot. It's the people and the connections that they're loving, not the time and place. Wow, what an idiot.
Can you imagine survivors of Nazi death camps returning to those sites to throw a reunion, to watch slideshows of their time?
The survivors of Nazi death camps did return to those camps. They did, to honor the people they lost. They did return, you colossal moron. They did. There's famously survivors going back to places like Auschwitz to lay flowers. They absolutely do that. You colossal moron.
I'm there and to have a barbecue together, or maybe residential schools were boarding schools where
Yeah, and the survivors find each other and they reminisce about making it through. They reminisce. I don't, you're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot. Like, doesn't he understand that groups of survivors of those very same Nazi death camps you're talking about go and meet other survivors at them and share in their lived experiences, and the joy they find in each other is beautiful, even while the place was horrific. And I'm not saying that these boarding schools are Nazi death camps, but that's the narrative he wants to project. He wants to project, oh, this is a genocidal death camp, and nobody is saying that except for him and his cronies and his Catholic liars who want you to go, oh, well, if it wasn't a death camp, then the Catholic Church did nothing wrong, because that sounds absurd. Is that what they're teaching these kids? It sounds absurd. Of course it sounds absurd. They want it to sound absurd.
some bad things along with some good things happened. Like most of what characterizes a very complicated era of history that is too remote from our own experience to be able to make the kind of moral judgments that we...
Too remote in history to make moral judgments about. Really. It was like just before the turn of the century, like 1890 something. So 100 and something years ago. Suddenly moral relativism for the win. Hey, Brian? It's all moral objectivity until your church is in trouble, and then moral relativity for the win.
Insist on making for some reason. An era in which people like Venerable Bishop Vital Grandin had to navigate and to try to make the best out of what was often desperate situations and circumstances, motivated by an obvious and deep affection for the people he was advocating for.
Yeah, I don't doubt that he had a deep affection for those people, but he also thought to save their souls, he had to take their children away and forcibly convert them to Catholicism. That's what he thought would be best for them. And it's wrong. Yeah, he was a product of his time. I get that. But that doesn't mean that we venerate or glorify what he did, because what he did was reprehensible. It was horrible. And yeah, he didn't know any better. But that doesn't mean we glorify him today. We say, hey, this guy was mistaken and he did horrible things, and we don't venerate the man.
People who, again, by all historical accounts, deeply loved him back. To insist that his legacy chart a course of infamy is to further victimize those people and to refuse to hear their actual stories.
Well, why aren't you listening to all the stories about people being abused? And I hate the church music in the background. I dislike this man intensely.
And their own record of history that they might want us to know, instead insisting on a black legend that appeases our perverse sense of incoherent postmodern outrage.
So it's ironic, and this is where I wanted to end it on, because he just said this perverse history which pervades our sense of moral outrage, that he's stoking. He is strawmanning what the accusations are, and making this big monster out of it so it sounds absurd. So, he's kind of making what is reasonable moral outrage over a culture and a people having their children go missing and literally turn up dead. And some are still missing. They are called the missing because they don't know where their descendants got to. A lot of the time, they were told, hey, it's evil to go back to this tribe. They destroyed a culture, or at least attempted to. And you're making it this mass genocide. They just ate people and tried to murder them in order so nobody believes it. You are a scumbag, Brian Holdsworth. You are an absolute scumbag. Now, Yeah, so that'll do it from Brian. I do not blame anybody for going and searching for more fun stuff, because I was actually absolutely offended by that. I see so many similarities to Australia's stolen generation, where the government came and took away the children of Aboriginal Australians and raised them while converting them to Catholicism and forcing them to ignore their cultural heritage. Reprehensible. And the fact that the Pope has said, oh yeah, we made a mistake, we did wrong, here, have money. Absolutely 100% this did happen, and that reparations are definitely deserved. We've got to heal beyond this. And sort of saying, oh, well, you think Catholics came and genocided people. That is not helping. That's not helping, because the First Nation of Canadians are not saying that. They're not saying that. Right? And even sort of classifying it as, oh, you're claiming that there's mass graves, when the First Nation chieftains literally directly said, there are no mass graves. There are unmarked graves. Do not say it's mass graves, because there are none. And he goes out and puts this out there. So he basically is saying, well, if I can prove there's no mass graves that I made up, then the church did nothing wrong. No, that's not how this works. That is not how any investigation works. It's not like, a wife goes missing and somebody's up for assault on somebody. Well, if they didn't murder them, they've done nothing wrong. No, nothing works like that, Holdsworth. What are you talking about? He is absolutely lying about no bodies being found. There was absolutely bodies found. He is lying about the mass graves that the media ran, because the media didn't run mass graves. They ran unmarked graves, which is correct. Only a small percentage, maybe about a third of them, ran the mass graves, and that has been corrected. Actually, that wasn't mass graves, that was any errors at all, but most of them have been corrected, which happens a lot in journalism. There have been confirmed bodies that had to be reinterred, i.e. buried again. So him saying there were no remains, 100% a lie. 100%. Every First Nations person I know has been impacted by a residential school and their family. Good and bad things, but it was all without the consent or the control of the parent and child. Yeah, and that's the problem. That's the problem. Oh, Maximiliano Vishnu has gone crazy again. Yeah, my voice is recovered. I can do this. Thank you so much, Max. You are absolute amazing. Let's start. Is there anybody left to gift to? Look, if you don't have gifts turned on, you need to turn it on, or else Mac's gonna keep gifting and I want my entire subscriber base gifted. Max, you are a champion. But it's funny that he's like, I could be arrested for this. I'll just wait for them to go through. It looks like they're taking their time, Max. I do want to read them out, mate. Austin doesn't have one. Have you got them turned on, Austin? Oh, yeah, it's in your it's in your, oh god, I looked this up the other day. Green package at the top of the chat. Really? Yeah, there is a setting to turn it on. Give me one sec. I think it's in the. Okay. Listen up. I got it. You go to you go to join. Like, so on the video down the bottom, there should be a join button. Don't worry, you don't have to join. It's fine. It's 100% fine. So if you hit join, and then you go to the 3 dots at the top of the membership box, you should have a setting for gift settings. If you go into gift settings, there should be a button for allow gifts, and you just need to turn that on. Have we got that? Have we got that, everybody? So if you don't have... Okay, you found it yourself. All right, well, I'm redundant. Thanks, Austin. I'm redundant. Absolutely redundant. Thank you. Yeah. So, no, Phantom, go to join, and you don't join, like, don't pay for it if Max is willing to. Sorry, Max. Yeah, and then go to the 3 dots up the top, and then gift settings, and just click the little slider to say, yes, I accept gift settings, Phantom. Learn about memberships and report perks. What? So you hit join, and then settings, report perks, and there should be gift settings under report perks. Really? And then you click on allow gifts. Allow gifts. Really? Are you on mobile, maybe? Yeah, if you're on mobile. No. If it's a brand account, it won't work. A brand account? Really? No, that's not true, is it? Is that true? If it's brand, it won't work? No. Right? No. What? I'm just looking through the settings on the channel, just see if I can find it. Channel settings, no. Let's see. Oh boy, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure. Sure. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. That's where I thought it was. That's where I thought it was. Cincinnati for it. Let's switch account. Okay, that was it. All right, cool. Cool. What's your link? Oh, there you go. Yeah. All right, that's beautiful. Yeah, good idea, Amber. That's awesome, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, clever girl. Yeah, click on the link. Oh, okay. Maybe I should do a happy show. You know, I'd appreciate it, Nitty. If you want to start it, I can hold off and transfer to you, redirect to you if you want, mate. That's not a problem. Let me do these readouts. Max, I think you're ripped off by the algorithm, mate. I don't think there's enough people for you to give any more memberships to. So please stop, because seriously, there are so many readerships that are not going out. Yeah. It sounds like a scam. If you want, I mean, I can message them and say, hey, you know, you need partial refund, maybe. Like, can we do that? Or maybe share for an instant readership, I guess. I don't know how it works. Anyway, we've got Keith Ricketts, Nike Spitz. Wow, okay, nice shoes. Is that you, Ralph? We have Austin Sims. Yeah, man. What a guy. What a guy. Yeah, absolutely. They'll refund him automatically. Oh, that's good. That's good. I trust Robin on that. So they'll refund you automatically. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's fine then. That's fine. Not a problem. Not a problem. Yeah, I don't want you to get ripped off by YouTube. Hell, I get ripped off by YouTube enough as it is. No reason for both of us to. Like, seriously. Yeah. So Ember's got if you don't have it enabled, Ember, the beautiful woman Ember, put in the link for it. So I might actually, if I can find that, I'll pin it. Niddy, if you're doing a show, just let me know, my friend, and I will redirect to you. I'll just keep an eye on my YouTube, just see if Niddy's got something started up. I do like to redirect to my friends and people. I end a bit late. Actually, it's a bit easier now that it's sort of a daylight savings is kicked in, because we don't have it, and I think you guys in the States and Canada do. So things have been thrown out a little, so I might be able to redirect a bit earlier. Well, it's the same time for me. It should be earlier for you guys. Oh, look, no, it's okay. You know, it's okay. It's okay. Look, the only fighting I support is robot fighting, quite frankly. I'm very adamant about that. Robot Wars, 10 p.m. when you are? Yeah, it's 11 here. So it used to be like a 12-hour difference. It's now 13, as I found out, between like Eastern time and this one. I don't see Niddy up and running yet. So I think I might just sort of bow out. I haven't heard from Niddy. Niddy, are you... Can you tell me if you're doing something? Can you tell me if you're doing something? Oh, you started? Okay, cool. All right. Well, as sort of an outro, I really dislike what these Catholic apologists are doing for their church. Just the amount of lies and misinformation they are spreading. I don't have a problem with the Canadian government. Public disinformation, intentional disinformation to further this narrative of the native people had nothing wrong with them, happening to them. I don't have a problem with them making that illegal. I think it's fine. I think the precedent is from Germany, you know, and if you want to deny that an atrocity happened, I don't have a problem with the government cracking down on that, because it is reprehensible, absolutely reprehensible to do so. And Brian Holdsworth is a disgusting human being who should be ashamed of himself for the many lies that he propagated throughout this, as well as the incredibly manipulative way that he is trying to blow it out of proportion so he can say that it's ridiculous and that it's just an attack against the church. You know, oh, you're saying it's genocide, it's an attack against the church. No, nobody is saying that. You're the one saying that to get sympathy for the church. It's not right. It's not right. So yeah, but thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure. This has been Fundamentalist Friday. Please do like, subscribe, share this with your friends if you want them to know about the atrocities that the church is currently using their mouthpieces on YouTube to cover up. It's horrendous. It's unacceptable. I don't... No, it's going to be, according to the Act, it can be up to 2 years in prison, depending on the offences. But a fine is fine with me. You know, I think it would only be that sentence if it was really egregious and they kept on doing it. You know, I would imagine so. But hey, maybe a bit of time in jail, we could rehabilitate Brian Holdsworth so he wouldn't tell such egregious lies to spread hatred for the native Canadian community. Maybe. And what occurs to me is the native Canadian community has done everything possible to say, hey, this isn't a mass grave. It's not an actual genocide. And it's just, wow. wow, you're still putting those words into their mouths. It's disgusting. It's just disgusting. And I noticed that he basically took all of these, oh, well, the survivors like the place. Where were they on your channel? Did you talk to any of them, Brian? Or did you just spread more misinformation and disinformation? Did you just assume they all had a great time? Disgusting. Anyway, be kind to yourself. If you are feeling set upon by these kind of streams, I had to get this off my chest. And the more I read about this over the last week, the more I went, no, I've got to talk about this. It resonated so hard with me because of the stuff that happened in Australia. Absolutely resonated with me. And but be kind to yourself. If you can't handle it, I get there's times I don't want to watch stuff about the American election or Trump or some of this stuff. No, I can't. I'd love to sit and listen to it. It's too much. It is too much, and I totally get it. Austin, you made it to the end. You know, kudos to you, brother. Like Bigfoot Jesus for Austin making it to the end when you really didn't feel up to it. I get you, man. Like I totally don't blame you. And I totally understand. I really do. I really do. But be kind to yourself. If it is going to make you miserable, please. I don't take any offense at people leaving to watch something a bit happier. I really don't. Be kind to each other. Let's not minimize what the victims of colonialization went through. Let's not minimize it. Let's say, hey, I'm not to blame, but I, as well as everybody else, are responsible for making this world a better place. It's not hard. It's not hard. But thank you, everybody. Have a great one, and I will see you in the next one.